other. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much, Nombasa. As Nombasa had said, Ntabise Mohale, I look after our regulatory engagements with different regulators as well as association within the domestic landscape in South Africa. Thank you.
Thanks, Ntabise. We'll go in alphabetical order according to the list I have. Adeline is the first one on the list. If you can please just introduce yourself, and if you can switch your camera on, it would be nice to just see each other's faces, and then you can switch it back off. Thank you. Adeline, can you hear me? Okay, let's move on. We'll move to Elmarie.
Good afternoon. I'm Elmarie de Villiers from Cliff Decker Hofmeyer.
Thank you. Welcome, Elmarie. Joseph.
My name is Joseph Anagula. I work as a transactional banker for the consumer team in Standard Bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Joseph. Begezela.
Hi, everyone. My name is Begezela. I work as an accounts receivable administrator at Honda South Africa.
Thank you and welcome. Kerry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kerry and I work with Alexandra Forbes. I'm the banking manager at Alexandra Forbes.
Thanks and welcome, Kerry. Grant.
Hi everyone, my name is Grant Cressy. I'm a transactional banker for Standard Bank, focusing mainly on the pension fund asset manager responsibilities.
Thank you, Grant. Welcome. Elroy.
Good morning, afternoon, everybody. My name is Elroy Dick. I'm also a transactional account manager. I'm looking after the multi-sector portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Elroy. Welcome. Angela.
Good afternoon. My name's Ingela Wessels. I'm from Sibanye Stillwater. I'm doing all the payments through the Standard Bank portal.
Thank you and welcome, Angela. Estelle.
Good day, I'm Estelle Fourie and I'm from Unpacked.
Thank you. Welcome, Kylie. Kelly. There we go.
Thanks, Nombasa. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Kelly Jackson. I work as a transactional account manager in the non-bank financial institution space. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Sandra.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sandy Jones. I'm the International Service Manager for Corporate Clients.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Rera. I don't know if it's me now. Here I am. I'm Karen Rera. I work for Alexandra Forbes. I head up the banking division.
Thank you. Welcome, Karen. Gineilwe.
Sorry, I'm talking to myself here. My name is Gineilwe. I'm the treasurer for Smart Wholesale. I handle macro.
Welcome. Thank you, Gineilwe. Lorraine.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorraine. I'm the finance manager at E4 Strategic.
Thank you and welcome, Lorraine. Louisa.
Good afternoon. My name is Louisa Ramos and I work for Concord Construction.
Thank you. Welcome. Sharon.
Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Masakela. I'm Treasury at Hellman Titan.
Thank you and welcome, Sharon.
Thank you.
Hobbs.
Thank you, Nombasa. My name is Popola Mashuha, known as Hobbs. I'm the transactional banker looking at the diversified industries portfolio.
Thank you. Welcome. Paul.
Hi, I'm Mpho Motolo. I work for Coca-Cola Beverages Africa.
Thank you, Mpho, and welcome.
Thank you.
Naveen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Naveen Bejnat. I'm a finance manager at Momentum.
Thanks and welcome, Naveen. Ngane.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ngane Sitebe, Treasury Manager at Engen.
Thank you and welcome. Monica. Monica Ngidi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Ngidi. I work at Mondi as a treasury accountant.
Thank you, Monica. Ntombi Zamangwe. You're on mute, Ntombi.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Ndombi Zamangwe, and I'm a financial accountant working for Corning Products South Africa.
Thank you and welcome. Refilwe.
Hi, my name is Rupilwe, and I'm the cash book clerk at Trans Africa Projects. Thank you.
Thanks and welcome. Regina.
Hi, everybody. My name is Regina Masuka. I work for Weber Wenzel as a foreign creators clerk.
Thank you and welcome. Ronnie.
Yes, I'm Ronnie. I'm a financial controller at Honda, South Africa. Yeah, I'm working together with Bekezela.
Thank you, Ronnie. Welcome.
Thank you.
Rukaya. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes, hi, I'm Rukaya Adam. I work at Santam Treasury.
Thank you. Shane Maduna.
Good afternoon, everyone. Shane Maduna from Weber Wenzel. I just sit behind Regina.
Okay. Welcome. Susan Boshoff.
You're on mute.
Sorry, that didn't unclick. Sorry, I'm Susan Boshoff. I'm head of treasury for CFA Holdings South Africa.
Welcome, Susan. Yvette.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm the senior specialist at the group treasury for the Altron Group.
Thank you and welcome. Tracy. Don't forget about you.
Hi, everybody. I am Tracy Seeley, and I work for Standard Bank as a transaction banker, just here to support my clients that are on the line. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tracy. So welcome, everybody. At least we have a sense of who is in the group. Tabi saying, when I go into slide mode, I will not be able to see hands. If you could please assist me with any hands. We are now going to move straight into the presentation. As I mentioned in the beginning, it is not for us to bore you by PowerPoint. It is merely a presentation that's helped us to guide the conversation. We only have 3 slides that we are going to discuss. And let us start with the regulatory landscape. I'm going to hand over to Tabi Singh to take us through what drives this change. Thanks, Tabi Singh.
Thank you, Nombasa. I will look out for hands for you on my side. Good afternoon once again, everybody. We thought it was important for us to firstly explain the current regulatory landscape, what is happening today, to also unpack how the change came about, what does it mean, and ultimately other changes that also came about through this new directive that was issued in Namibia and some of the things that has happened, but also what does it mean when this new directive is then implemented. What would it mean in terms of us processing transactions? So I will then start. I think it's important for us just not to assume, but to give context today, to say there is a current arrangement between the Common Monetary Area countries And this countries includes South Africa, Lesotho, Eswatini, and Namibia. The understanding is that in terms of how you can process a payment as well as a collection, you can then, there is an opportunity or a choice for you to utilize what we call BankSafe EFT system. And this is a system that is utilized also in South Africa for when you are about to then do a payment or a collection to any other agent bank in South Africa. This system, the transactions are cleared in South Africa as well as settled in South Africa. From a common monetary area countries, those 4 countries, we have a one-to-one peg currency where settlement can also happen in ZAR. So what then we then extended what we had adopted in South Africa to say that as much as we have this BankSafe EFT rails that could be utilized within South Africa, that was also extended to the 4 countries, meaning that when you want to then do a collection to a bank account that is held in Lesotho, you can then submit that collection as part of your domestic transaction. It will look exactly the same, and that transaction will then be processed in South Africa. It will also be settled in South Africa. So that's what it meant. Similarly to a payment, you can then do a payment utilizing the EFT credit rails that are then done in South Africa to any of the 4 countries. And that transaction will then be accepted utilizing those particular rails. So what then happened is that on the 14th of October 2022, Namibia issued or gazetted a directive. That directive then stated that from a Namibian perspective, they would want to stop processing transactions in the manner in which we're currently doing as CMA countries, as a region. So what that meant is that from a Namibian perspective, they had wanted that if there are any collections that are happening within from a Namibian bank account, and there's an entity that is sitting within the 3 countries that are part of the CMA, that particular collection is no longer then processed through our BankSafe EFT rails, but that collection is then processed in Namibia. And then it's also cleared through NemClear, which is an equivalent to what we have as BankSafe. And then the settlement of that particular collection will then happen in Namibia. Also, from a payments perspective, what the directive seek to do was that from a payment perspective, if you're an entity in South Africa and you want to then process a payment, you can no longer then utilize, your EFT credit. You will need to do a cross-border transaction, but that cross-border will be for the CMA country. So the destiny would be a CMA country, which is slightly different to how you normally do your cross-border to any other country. But Nombasa will get into it to say what is required from a regulatory reporting, exchange control, given that now it's a cross-border. But from a Namibian perspective, they then wanted to see that transaction as a cross-border, because then it's coming from one country to another country. Even though the transaction will be treated as a cross-border, that transaction will be settled in what we call SADC RTGS, and the settlement will still happen in the ZAR currency, but they just wanted it to then be a cross-border. So with that, as the conversation started, initially the go live was supposed to be 2023, but between South Africa as well as Namibia, between our regulators, as well as the banks within South Africa and Namibia, we then reached out to the regulator in Namibia to ask that we actually move the date, and that was then moved to the 15th of April, 2024, as the final date for us to then stop processing transaction utilizing the current BankSafe EFT credit or debit rails, but utilizing what I had said from a collection as well as from a payments perspective. With that, there was also some of the conversation that were happening in the industry that you're well aware of was that FNB as well was trying to then exit the CMA rails as a bank, to say that they wouldn't want to then process their collections that are destined for FNB, as well as them originating those collections to any other bank utilizing the BankSafe rails. They wanted then to move out of that. That conversation, we then aligned with the industry to say, rather, because we already have a PSD-9 from a Namibian perspective, we allow that process to happen. And then from an FNB perspective, they retracted their exit. With that, because what it meant from a PSD-9, it meant that out of the 4 countries, Namibia will then be treated differently as compared to Eswatini, Lesotho, and South Africa. And that started a conversation in the industry to say, do we need to relook at this arrangement that we have from a CMA perspective, because it's not going to be for all the 4 countries. And the agreement from an industry perspective was that we also need to sunset the CMA arrangement that we are utilizing the banks of rails to process these particular transactions. And that meant that come the 9th of September, we will then stop also originating transaction from South Africa to either Eswatini or Lesotho utilizing the EFT credit. That will then be a cross-border payment for CMA countries. Similarly to a collection, come the 9th of September, any collections that you have that you're originating from South Africa into those 2 countries, that will then be a collection that can be done in those particular countries. So meaning that you will need to then be able to process or submit the files in Lesotho, Eswatini, if you want to collect to those bank accounts. And then you will then be required to open a bank account in those particular markets so that you are able to then receive the proceeds of those particular collections. So with that said, we said that as much as we're starting on the 15th of April with Namibia, we will still allow the utilization of the bank's EFT credit and debit system for payments that are done or collections that are done between South Africa, Eswatini, and Lesotho up until we get to the 9th. On the 9th of September, the CMA arrangement will then cease to exist. With that, from a collection perspective, if you still want to continue collecting and you're a South African entity, you still want to continue collecting in the from the Namibian bank account, what would need to happen is that you can have one option where you localize, and localizing means that you submit the file, and that file is then submitted to NAMCLI, as I've said. It will then be processed in Namibia. What is also required is that you will then also be required to open a Namibian bank account. And that Namibian bank account, it's where after the settlement has happened and we have done all the industry processing, the proceeds of those collections will then be deposited into your Namibian bank account. What will also happen is that if you want to then move those funds from your Namibian bank account to any other account that you have, if it's a South African account, that will then be a cross-border transaction out of Namibia into South Africa, but it will be a cross-border for a CMA country. Similarly to the same thing that we'll then do once Eswatini and Lesotho and South Africa, we then reach the 9th of September. That will also mean that for any collections that you're doing that is destined for accounts that are held in Lesotho or Eswatini, you also need to localize, meaning you will have to have a bank account, and the processing of those transactions will need to be done into those markets, because we'll no longer be utilizing the bank's EFT debit rails for us to then initiate those collections. Nombasa will then come in to explain in terms of what is required in terms of for you to be enabled to localize. What are the regulations saying when you are processing those transactions, as well as the implication from a cross-border perspective? What does that mean? But from a regulation perspective, just to summarize, we will no longer be allowed to utilize the bank's rails. We will have to either localize or do a cross-border if we want to then do transactions between the 4 countries from a CMA perspective.
Thanks, Singh. Let's just pause if there are any hands. Thank you.
There's a hand.
Yeah, sorry. I don't want to wait till the end because then I'm going to forget to ask.
No, it's fine.
So for these cross-border, understand everything, do we need SARB approval?
So Nombasa is going to get into that, into the next slide, but Nombasa, you can come in. So she will then explain what is the regulatory requirements, what is the exchange control requirements that we need to comply with. And you will understand that I'm busy saying cross-border to a CMA countries. There is a differentiator between your normal cross-border and the cross-border that you'll be doing to a CMA country.
Okay. All right, that's exactly what's going to be my next question. Is it normal SARB reporting or is it different? Okay, I'll wait for Nombasa then to tell us.
Okay, I'm going to pause here and see if there's any clarity in terms of what the regulation says, what's required, what's about to change, what do we need to do in order to comply with the regulation.
Any other hands or any other
questions?
There are
no other hands. I think you can move Nombasa so that we can then get to explain what does it mean practically. Thanks.
Thanks, Sabi-Singh, for that overview. So let's maybe deal with the question first. Any additional? No. There are no additional requirements, no sub-approvals required, but we are required, and I will explain why just now. When you are sending cross-border transactions out of South Africa into Namibia, you are required to provide a BOB code, and no supported documents are required. That's a short answer. So let's start with the collections. So collections imply that you are a South African entity and you used to collect any funds from Namibia. That process, as Tabi saying has explained, will no longer be available, that option. And because it won't be available, so what do you then need to do? Because you still need to collect from your client sitting in Namibia. You have the option to open a new profile on your BAL Namibia. If you're already in Namibia and have a BAL profile, you add an additional profile that will then allow you to do these payments. If you are in Namibia and you don't have a collections account, you need to open an account where you need to then receive the funds, as Thabiseng has explained. The localization implies I send a collection file to a local client in Namibia, and those funds are then deposited into an account in Namibia and cannot be pulled into an account in South Africa. So if you, for example, in the past, you used to send a direct debit to Namibia and you pull the funds automatically from your client, you are no longer allowed to do that. You now need, for example, if you're not going to localize, you may have to send them an invoice. They will then pay you as a cross-border transaction. You throw your invoice into your South African account, so those funds are now pushed to you and no longer pulled. But if you are in Namibia, you can continue pulling from your Namibian account into your customer's account in Namibia. Now, this is a change that we are here to support you as a client through creation the profiles, opening of the accounts. And you heard our transactional bankers on the line, and we do have a team that will help you and enable you to be able to do these payments. So once on the collection side, once you've then collected within Namibia, there are cutoff times in terms of submissions of files, so you can get same-day receivables as well as future dated transactions. Now, on the payment side, so that's collections, you collecting funds from Namibia. Option 1, you must be localized in Namibia. Option 2 is that you must then invoice and your beneficiary in Namibia does a cross-border payment into your account in South Africa. Now, payments. You now need to pay a counterpart in Namibia or even find your offices and operations in Namibia now that you've settled in. For those kind of payments, we are required to make those payments as cross-border. You will see in the previous, when I talk collections, I mentioned BAL AR. This is a channel that is in the rest of Africa space. In SA, it's just BAL. And we enable you, for those who already have the international profiles, you commonly know them. You have an ICM profile or an iTrade, availability of those two channels. We use them currently for processing cross-border. And now, because we're doing this additional, if you have those, you'll continue to use them, and you just simply add the accounts and the beneficiaries that you wish to make. If you do not have iTrade or ICM, and you want to do cross-border, we'll now have to enable you to have a BAL international profile. And when you create that profile, you have to create your beneficiaries. We will then assist you in locking the beneficiaries. And this process, as I mentioned, we have enablement managers who are able to support you through our implementation teams where you need that support. Now, you may be a host-to-host client, and you ask yourself, how does that change my world? If you're host-to-host clients who currently send us host files, the actual file format for host has changed. It needs to be updated. And so our technical team needs to sit with your technical team and make sure we update the file specs, we test them, and we make sure they are ready for us to transact by the 15th of April, as mentioned on the previous slide. Now, for all payments that are outgoing, a BOP code is required. Namibia has its own BOP codes, and we will share the BOP codes at the end of the session when we share this doc with you. They are pretty similar to what South Africa has, but there are slight nuances. So our counterparts in Namibia are available to support and guide if there's any understanding around the BOP codes that you don't understand, but we do not need any supporting documents for these. And so the question that came earlier, do I need to go and apply to the regulator? No, you just initiate your payment and provide a BOP code. No regulatory applications are required. In a previous session, we were asked if I have existing loans and other, that I have in the countries, will those still be valid? The answer is yes, they remain valid up until expiry. What also is important is to remember that the trade between us and Namibia and the CMA countries remain in the ZAR currency. So that is not changing. We will continue to pay ZAR into Namibia or receive ZAR in SA. And if you want to make a payment to Namibia that is for the beneficiary to receive the same day, we need to make sure we receive the file before 2 p.m. If it is after 2 p.m., it will then be moved for the next date, or any other future dated payments will then be received and processed after 2 p.m. Now, it is important that we understand the collections piece because it's a very different fundamentals how we used to do it. And the payment is another fundamental. And then you may be one who does both, right? Which then means you are going to have to follow both process. However, if you are already enabled on BOL AR, we are not going to give you too many channels. We're going to allow you to add accounts, and those accounts can enable you to pay using the same profile into the South African market for your payments, and you just simply add the additional accounts and profiles that are required according to your business. So this is how we're moving from what we used to. Big fundamental change in how we used to is also around what information is required when you do a payment. You will recall that in a payment of a domestic payment, the only data that you really need is the person's name and the account number and the bank information. That's it. With going cross-border, there's an additional requirement that you now need to have information on your client. For example, you need to have the address where the client is currently operating from, which you never had to do in domestic payments, which means you now need to increase your database with information for you to enable you to do the cross-border payment. And that's a big impact in your space. If you have many clients that, for example, many pensioners that you're paying pension funds to and therefore collecting any debit orders on the other side, you now suddenly have to have a lot more information on your client because cross-border payment requires that additional data that is needed for verification. And it's also there because of the FATF requirement, that is a global requirement that assists us in verifying all our personal contacts that we deal with. It's an extension of KYC that you know your client, you know your data, and some of data is screened and used to detect any behavior that we've seen as fraudulent in the past. And so our financial institution center also uses this data for validating and for combating crime across the different jurisdictions. So that is the fundamental change that's going to impact you and how you do your payments in the future. I'm going to pause and allow for questions.
There's a hand.
I have to laugh because it's me again.
No, Karen, please, you're keeping the conversation
fine.
going.
At least you know I'm listening.
Yes.
Nombasa, you mentioned that the host-to-host file changed. The SWIFT file, is that a different, because we have a host-to-host SWIFT file where we pay our international pensioners via already. So we just adding Namibia and Eswatini and Lesotho to the SWIFT file. Has that SWIFT file changed? Is it different for the CMA or is it the same SWIFT file?
So there is a slight change in that SWIFT file because we will append, if you're using the old empty messages on your line 57, we'll put a keyword called CMA. So we differentiate it from the other SWIFT payments.
So will we have to have a separate file for the CMA countries? It can't be mixed in with our other international payments.
It can be. That's why we then put
the whole file is going to change.
Yeah, it can be mixed with other files when you submit. But remember, in the international space, if you're going to do SWIFT, it's the individual SWIFT messages, so it will read the destination address, will look for the code word, and will process it as such. So there will be minor changes in terms of your field 57 in what you put in there for it to STP and be recognized as a CMA payment and not be treated like others. Like I said, we've got dispensation for incoming, so they are non-reportable at all. We want to increase STP. So those keywords will help us in the various fields to be able to read the file, pick it up, and process immediately. Whereas currently, if you're receiving, incoming, you would have to stop and will ask you for the documentation on Bob code. That will not be happening going forward on the CMA tagged files.
I'll just chat to Alistair. Alistair is our technical contact, so I'll just chat to him to make sure we have got the latest. Then you spoke about BOP codes, but if we make payments, we're going to use the SA BOP codes because we're going from SA, so I'm not worried about that. The only other thing I want to ask you is, so for the pensioners, it'll go host to host. We're not worried about that. We've got a small amount of pensioners that we pay from an SA account to Namibia. Like I said, they'll go, but then we have to do the recon for NAMRA. Will we be able to pay NAMRA via the Banking Online International profile?
So what is NAMRA?
NAMRA. Oh, sorry. You know, I'm so used to the acronyms, I forget other people. NAMRA is the Namibian Receiver of Revenue.
Oh, okay. So you'll be able to pay I thought there was a client, that's why I needed to ask.
Sorry, man.
So you will be able to make payments to the receiver. There will also be cross-border. That's correct.
Okay, yeah, but we can do it via the Banking Online profile.
Yes.
Okay, and then we're obviously not going to put on the SWIFT file, but our normal pensioners and claims and that we all pay via SWIFT file. Correct. Thank you.
Correct. Alistair is very much involved in the program, is quite aware. So he's a very good contact to reach out to.
Yeah, no, we've in very close contact with him. So thanks very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, Karen, to say, even though you're doing it on BOL online channel, it has to be under the international profile, Nombasa, not the domestic. Yeah, just to make sure.
Yeah, we're actually busy with Renelle de Wet, our client relationship manager. With her and Alistair, we're busy. We've actually got a profile that's not being used currently, and we're going to use it exclusively for CMA payments. So yeah,
that's great.
For the ones that doesn't go on the host-to-host file. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great. Any other hands on your side?
Sharon is number one on my side. Sharon, you can go for it.
Thanks, Ntabiseng. Okay, I had Karen just ask about the BOL International. I'm currently using both domestic and international. So am I going to delete all the Namibian profiles on the domestic and reload them on the international profile? And am I going to put them as ZAR? Because on my profile, it's only the foreign currencies. So since Namibia, now we're paying them as a ZAR, am I still going to load them as a ZAR on the Business Online International?
Okay, so you've got your profile. So all your beneficiaries will have to reload under your international profile so that they can be picked up. And what you can do is the enablement managers that I spoke to in the implementation will help you with that process, is that you can copy from the one into the other. And we copy those across for you, and then you can review them, and then we lock them for you at the end of the day. That's how we're going to help you with that process.
I like the copying one because I don't have to reload them one by one.
One by one, absolutely not.
But I can see on international we use SWIFT instead of a branch code. What do you call it? Yes.
Yeah,
We
SWIFT.
use
Yeah,
SWIFT,
yeah, the
yes.
SWIFT. Yeah, you need the SWIFT code. Yeah.
Yeah.
So every letter, bank letter that I've got for the previous suppliers, it must have a SWIFT number.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
All
of the
right.
process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Thanks very much.
we'll support you with that as we begin to enable you. I think you had another question you wanted to ask. There was a second part of your question.
I
that you
forgot.
asked if you've
It
covered.
was about that from an international profile, she's not going to be paying currency.
ZAR, yes, yes.
ZAR currency
Yeah.
or look.
Yeah.
If you're paying in the Namibian dollar, it's the same. There's no conversion as such, right? You can select it, but it's very rare that when we do a cross-border payment. Actually, the other day I was joking with a colleague to say, find me a Namibian dollar payment, and it was like looking for something that is quite rare to find. A lot of the payments into Namibia are in ZAR currency, even if it's from outside the South African borders, because it's the most used currency and it's easily tradable with anybody. So that is what mostly use. If you want to debit that credit their account in the Namibian dollars, you're most welcome. That won't stop you. But it's just that majority of those payments, 99.9%, have been going in ZAR. Yeah.
Okay. And okay. The only thing I can say, I think this system has already been started kicking from January, because I had a new supplier that I loaded in our domestic banking. The banking details was FNB. So I loaded, they didn't receive the money because I used the universal code. Then they said to me, please change it to the branch code that you see there. I changed it, they still didn't receive the money. So when I phoned the bank, they say, you know what, try to load these people at the foreign bank, because we don't know what the problem is. It took like a month going up and down. I loaded them in the foreign banking. I used Namibian dollars, as you said, but they did receive their money after that. So I think from this year, the system has been working.
So like Ntari Singh spoke earlier, FNB has been on that journey.
Yes.
For a while. And we had to be fair to the client, like you're saying, you now experience problems all of a sudden in the domestic space, whereas that's what we had informed the clients to do, because FNB has gone and done the change on their own. Hence, the CMA body had to sit and say, "Hello, FNB, we now need to get everybody aligned."
Okay. No, I think I love it. If it's still gonna work like all the other international payments, then I'm happy. I am so happy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have other hands. I have 3 hands. Ronnie.
Hi, thank you so much. Yeah, great. So I have 2 questions actually. I'm not sure if there's any other person there from the automotive. So we have a dealer actually in Namibia, right? And they actually have a floor plan facility with one of the South African banks, with the payment terms of invoice date +1. So which means is that the day we invoice them, by the next day, we are settled through their local floor plan facility. I'm just not sure now what the change point is going to be with regards to this current process on their floor plan. I'm not sure if you're able to comment on that.
Okay, just for make sure I understand the plan. It is based on an invoice. So you issue an invoice and they pay you.
Yeah.
So that process will continue. The only difference is they will now pay you using international profiles. They will pay you as a cross-border and
Yeah.
not as a local EFT. That's the difference.
So just from the payment terms perspective, will the invoice date +1 change?
No.
If everything is in order, I suppose.
No.
Then the next point, having mentioned that, you mentioned correctly that it's on an invoice basis, right? So how about, does those invoices require UCR numbers?
No. Remember I said no documentation is required.
Okay.
Only the BOB code when it's outward. If you're receiving it, the
Yeah.
payment, you don't, there's no even a required for you to issue a BOB or any documents. You will just get those funds in your account.
Okay. 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 No, that makes sense then. Well, that's clear. Okay, good. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Is it all? Okay.
Yeah.
We have another hand, Naveen.
Hi, okay, this should be a quick one. To activate the iTrade program there, can we do it via the BOL self-administration to activate and give grant access, or do we need to contact you guys to do it for us?
So do you already have iTrade or ICM, or you want to create a new profile completely?
Create a new profile completely.
Okay. The quickest way is to contact your transactional banker, because your transactional banker will put you directly in touch with the implementation team, and they will then assist you in a expedited process of getting that profile created. We're mindful that we are 19 days away from go live in Namibia. And so we have created a specialized team to support all our clients in enabling those profiles. So who's your transactional banker?
We use Reshma.
Reshma, okay.
Yeah.
So just send Reshma an email, and Reshma is very aware of the process. We'll get you in touch with the implementation team and will assist you as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last hand, Sandra.
Thank you. Internal question. In terms of the beneficiary locking for overseas beneficiaries, as we call it, the turnaround time is 24 to 48 hours. Will the same apply for these Namibian beneficiaries?
So for the locking of beneficiary, we have an end of day process. So whatever we receive today will be locked at the end of day and be active tomorrow, up all the way up until the 15th, as we are preparing for go live. That's our turnaround time.
Okay. And for after the 15th?
After the 15th, we'll then have to follow the normal process.
The normal process.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. And then we have Lorraine.
Hi guys, I just want to confirm something. So like if Namibia is paying South Africa, are you saying we can add the Namibian bank onto our international banking platform here in South Africa, or do we have to open a different international platform for Namibia?
So let me just understand, where are you sitting? You are a South African. You want to pay a beneficiary in Namibia?
No, it's the other way around. Namibia is paying us here in South Africa. In South Africa has an international banking platform, but Namibia doesn't.
So your Namibian entity who wants to pay you, they need to have an international profile to be able to pay you in South Africa.
Okay, so we can't add them onto our existing one here in South Africa.
Not on the South Africa one, because the South
all right.
African profile is slightly different, unless Namibia had one. Remember I said earlier there's BOL AR and BOL SA. If the Namibia had the AR, they would be able to add us the side, but we can't do vice versa.
We can't do, okay, all right. Okay, I hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, those were the last hand. You can continue to the next slide, Nombasa.
Thank you, Tabiseng. Now we're going to speak to the most important conversation. From your perspective, it's called price, but I want to also call it a cost implication. So we are moving, as Tabiseng said, from a local domestic payments to international. The cost is very different between the two. One, in the local market, when you pay if I'm paying Thabiseng in the domestic market, Thabiseng does not have to pay fees for receiving money. Whereas in the cross-border world, Thabiseng has to pay for receiving those funds from me. Now, we've sat as South Africa and Namibia, and please don't mind the numbers on here. It's just an illustration that I want to show you. These are standard. These are not the fees you have. And as we know that you would have had engagement with your transactional bankers and agreed on the fees you want to pay. So from a South Africa market, what we have agreed is that you have already had conversation over your annual price review. And whatever agreement you've had taken there, that decision, that price will remain, right? And so what is the change in cost and price? If you look at the SA costing model, we have here what we call SARS, and you'll see we call it outward, because in the past, we only paid for outward and not in, because it was domestic. With this change now coming in, becoming cross-border, this becomes a universal fee for both in and outwards, right? So we're now using the Cyrus rails. It becomes a cross-border transaction. You're now introduced to a Cyrus fee for both inward and outward. It's a lot higher than what you would pay for your domestic payment. And this is what I'm trying to show with these numbers. You can see a significantly higher amount than what. So the cost of the transaction becomes a lot more. And therefore, it's important that you understand it. You have engagements with your transactional bankers and break down what that fee is. The second big change, especially for those who are paying pensioners, pensioners are used to getting their full amount. If you're paying them 1,010 Rand, they would receive 110 Rand on an EFT because there is no fee. Now we're introducing an inward, which is when a pensioner receives, they suddenly have to pay a fee. You now, as a business, need to have a very a view on how you're going to manage this. You want your pensioner to get the full amount due to them. How are you going to then deal with this cost for the pensioner? You're going to take it. Remember, the concept in international is that there are three pricing types. You have an option as a foreigner and a foreign bank. We can take our, meaning you take all full cost and the beneficiary pays nothing. You have a share option where the Benny pays something and you pay something, and that's the share option, and then the Benny option where the beneficiary pays the full cost. Now this is now being introduced to your pricing. How are you having conversations with your pensioners in them not paying this fee? Because we understand some pensions can be very low, and taking away a 50 Rand is fundamentally big for a pensioner. So it's very important that we are aware of this and we're able to have the right conversations with our banks, with our pensioners, so they understand whatever decision you make. If you're going to pay a cross-border pension fund into Namibia, then this is the fee that comes in, right? Now, if you are in Namibia and localize in Namibia, that fee automatically goes away because it is a local payment and there is no need for the beneficiary to be charged for collections into their account as we had in SA. So that's the fundamental difference about, do I want to do payments cross-border, or I want to localize in Namibia for collections and some of these activities that are then redispersed in Namibia? There's a fundamental difference in the cost of that transaction. In Namibia, for example, if you're going to do a CMA payment in and out, remember we said when you invoice the other side, they're going to now pay you. It's an outward. It's then going to cost them 0.4% of the value of the transaction. If that works out to 939 Rand, you then charge a minimum of 40 and a maximum of 175. These are significantly different from how we used to be charged around a domestic payment. And I want to raise that because I want you to think about it as you do these processes and how it impacts your bottom line and your relationship with your beneficiary at the end of the day. Let me take questions.
Okay, I'll let you know if there are hands. I'm not seeing any hands, Nombasa.
Okay, so they're digesting. That's fine.
Yes.
It's something we seriously need to consider. And as you know, your transactional bankers are always there to explain and have these cost conversations, how we deal them. We are here to support you. And that's why it's important for us to highlight the impact of the decisions that you decide on, whether you localize or you do a cross-border payment from either way, whether you're doing it from Namibia or from South Africa. These are the intricacies that are being brought into your space that may have not been something to consider in the past. Just for information, where you see normal, when you see this in your pricing schedule, these would be your other cross-border payments that are used to making payment, and CMA the SARIS is then reserved for the CMA payments. Big difference between how we charge between the two. Because the intention of CMA is that they must be of a lower cost and as close to real time as possible. So the regulator has really enforced and is helping us to see how we can reduce that fee. We can't probably not get close to what we had as a domestic, but it must be far less. And this is what I'm trying to show. Versus a 589 inward and versus a 900 max fee, there must be a fundamentally lower fee for the CMA country than you would pay for your normal. And this is just the standard random numbers that I've used. Please don't take them as gospel. They're just to illustrate the variance in how the pricing works. Okay, if you have questions.
No questions. Oh, there's one hand from Sandra.
It's me again, sorry. So it says Cyrus output telegraphic transfer there. So I understand that there will be a difference between that. With regards to the inward, will it be a normal transaction or will they be charged a specific Cyrus fee for inwards?
So this will apply to both in and out, like as in Namibia.
It will
be in and out.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
If you have no hands, I want to draw your attention to this date, 15th April, 19 working days away. You got an Easter break, you got 21st holidays. So I really want to encourage us to really consider options sooner than later, so that we are sure that come that date, we are all ready and prepared, and the impact is minimized, if any, from your perspective in getting your payments to Namibia. That date, as I was saying earlier, is not going to move. It has moved once. The Namibian regulator is quite adamant that they are not going to move that date. So our window of opportunity to get this right is very small. So I do encourage that you reach out to your transactional bankers, make sure you are enabled in the right way. We give you the support we need before that date, because come this 15th of April and you try to do your normal EFT, it will reject. So that's all I want to encourage.
There's a hand from Sandra.
Sorry, so sorry, Nombasa.
No problem.
So when we submit the funds via international banking to Namibia, will the funds be available immediately to the beneficiary, or will there be a dependency on the BOC code being required by Namibia to credit the beneficiary's account? Or is it just going to flow automatically like our inwards will flow?
So the inwards then outwards to Namibia will require the BOP code. If there is a BOP code missing, there will be a delay. That's a confirmation from our Namibian counterparts. Because remember, it is not the bank's requirement, it is the regulator's requirement in Namibia. Remember the whole thinking behind aligning behind this movement. They want to be able to identify the flows into their country and what informs the flows into their countries for their fiscal, for their planning, for their national treasury, to plan around what are the foreign investment funds that come into the country. So that BOB code is
Okay.
important into Namibia.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hand, and I guess it's 3 o'clock, Nombasa. We can then close it.
So yeah, I want to just thank everybody for your time. That you've given to us, your engagement, your interaction. As I've said in the beginning, we will share this pack. We will add a slide with all the frequently asked questions that we've gathered in the various sessions. And I hope that we're going to have a very smooth transition. We are here to support you. We're here to answer any questions. There's no question big or small. That's what we're here to do. Please reach out if you need any support. We're here. Your transactional bankers are always a phone call away, and some of them have been on the call and are on the call with us here to show their support for you. And really, we look forward to a smooth transition. Any transition does come with hiccups, but we want to minimize those. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good day further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, bye. Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Okay, you stop the recording.